there was this incredible period of growth, which is almost unparalleled. And naturally now, the last couple of years, we've seen that settle down. And some media outlets have very much seen that slowing down of rapid growth as a decline and the end of plant-based. But really, we're just entering this new stage of maturity where growth can't keep accelerating as it has. It's just, it's not realistic to expect that from a sector.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the New Food Hub podcast, where you can discover the future of food. I'm Gemma Tadman, Business Communications Manager at ProVeg International, and I'm delighted to kick off the series today. In each episode, we'll be chatting with industry experts to provide you with actionable insights on the latest innovations and trends in the alternative protein space. So we created this podcast to help retailers, multinational food brands, and traditional meat and dairy producers to stay ahead in the rapidly evolving market with practical and honest advice. So you can tune in to get your questions answered, build your knowledge, and just join the movement towards a more sustainable food system. So over the next 12 episodes, we'll be navigating the future of alternative proteins, sharing insights on how to prepare ourselves and our businesses for a more sustainable food future. But to navigate the future of alternative proteins, we first need to understand how we got here today. So how and why the industry has grown and where it currently stands. Starting with plant-based. So in today's episode, we'll be discussing the rise of plant-based food, looking at the growth and impact of plant-based in the food industry and touching a little bit on the future as well. We have a really great guest lined up for you, Joe Hill from the father and son co-founding team at One Planet Pizza. Now, I really love the story behind One Planet Pizza. They kicked off in Mike's garage in the UK back in 2016 after they noticed that plant-based frozen pizzas weren't quite up to scratch. I'm very happy to say that they've made a very good impact in the UK now, stretching their dough across the UK into multiple supermarkets. Now, as part of One Planet Pizza, Joe brings really great expertise to this episode, having worked with multiple plant-based ingredient suppliers, manufacturers, retailers, and other food industry stakeholders. So let's get to it. Let's get chatting to Joe. Hi, Joe. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Gemma. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we'll start from the start, the evolution of the plant-based industry to what it has become today and what it might become in the future. So you've been vegan for a while, and obviously you've worked with Mike, who's been vegan since the 80s and has opened veggie restaurants. So both of you have, seen the plant-based industry change, grow, and improve on both the business and consumer sides quite a bit. How would you describe the evolution then of the plant-based food sector within the larger food industry thus far?
Very big question. Happy to try and tackle it as best I can. So, I guess from my perspective, I've been vegan for about 10 years and vegetarian since I was about 10 years old. But then always had a dad who's been vegan, around. So it's been a constant part of my life since day one, really. And we've been lucky enough to see the evolution of the plant-based sector firsthand, and as consumers, but then now as brand owners. And really, I guess the boom, so to speak, happened around 2014, 2015, and then we founded the company in 2016, partly as a response to the growing consumer demand for plant-based. But before then, we really don't think there was a big enough appetite to start a frozen pizza brand. And I guess probably the biggest shifts in gear that we've seen over the last 10 years or so has been the reason consumers come into the category. So as you guys will be well aware, probably the largest sector now driving the demand aren't actually vegans or vegetarians, which is really interesting. But they're flexitarians, or to coin a relatively new phrase that I've picked up, is open omnivores. So these are all of the people who don't identify as vegan or plant-based, but they're very much sitting on the fence, and they're quite easy to lure into the sector. And I guess the main push factors for them are concerns around health, which has been one of the biggest changes to the sector, is the reasons why people are coming into the category, these omnivores and flexis. So when I was a kid, people were vegetarian and vegan mostly for animal welfare reasons, concerns about how they were treating animals in farms, and where the food came from on their plate. But really now that's kind of flipped, and it's all about concerns around people's personal health more than anything now is the main driving force that we're seeing, and that the consumer research is suggesting. So people, for example, buying our pizzas because they're lower fat, lower salt, lower sugar, and people are just trying to eat a little bit healthier, and plant-based often can be part of that solution.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Obviously, the aim has been to get plant-based to a level of awareness that can compete with animal-based products. Do you think that plant-based food has become mainstream or normalized yet, or do we still have a really long way to go?
I think we've made more progress than ever anticipated in the last 7 or 8 years since we started the company. I don't think there have been many rapid growth stories like the plant-based sector in such a short window of time that's impacted the food and drink industry so widely, and really shaken it up and disrupted it. So I guess first off, there was this incredible period of growth which is almost unparalleled, and naturally now the last couple of years we've seen that settle down, and some industries have, and some media outlets have very much seen that slowing down of rapid growth as a decline and the end of plant-based. But really we're just entering this new stage of maturity where growth just can't keep growing, growth can't keep accelerating as it has. It's just it's not realistic to expect that from a sector. So I guess as we enter this new phase, really brands need to keep winning over that mass majority of consumers. So I attended a really interesting workshop within the plant-based sector here in the UK recently, and what was identified, probably the biggest findings of the latest research, was that actually more meat eaters now are open to trying plant-based food than ever before at any point in time on record, even 10 years ago when plant-based sector was in its prime, which is really encouraging. So it suggests that now that all the exposure and all of the education and information that's been out there has started to permeate through to meat eaters, and actually they're now more open to eating more plant-based food than potentially ever they have been. But that doesn't mean they are. It means that there's a challenge and an opportunity there for brands to win over those people who are still potentially on the fence.
How then can we continue that normalization then? How can we continue to win over those meat eaters that are on the fence?
Yeah, one part of the challenge is the language we use and how we present ourselves and position ourselves. So I think part of that is whether you use the word vegan or the words plant-based, and how your pack, your brand, how it looks visually on shelf. So for us, we've really been conscious to focus on taste and quality above everything else. And then hopefully consumers who are on the fence, once they've been assured that this is going to be a great tasting pizza, then they find out, okay, it's plant-based or it's vegan friendly. And then here are your other benefits that come with that claim. So we've been very careful to position taste and quality first. And I guess that comes down to understanding what these changing sort of purchasing drivers are for consumers, because not only are the consumers changing over time, but then why they're buying certain products, for what reasons, it is changing and evolving as well. So it's just being very clear and well informed on what they are. So last time we looked into this, looking at our consumers, like I said before, health very much comes out on top once they come into the plant-based categories. Can we use 2 or 3 very clear, strong call-outs on pack, such as 30% less fat or 50% less salt and sugar, things like that. High protein's another classic one that can pull in a lot of these consumers on the fence. And then it's delivering on all of those at the same time. You really have to be clear on what problem you're solving. So, for example, I'm looking at a high protein plant-based pizza because we know the appetite for high protein food doesn't seem to be declining. And there's a lot of meat and dairy options out there for high protein, but there's still a huge gap in the plant-based sector with that clear call out on pack. So it's understanding how we can give those consumers exactly what they're looking for and make it as easy and affordable and convenient as possible. I guess another one is going after younger audiences who are much more receptive to trying new things and are probably more concerned about the environment and the impact of the food they eat on the planet. So it's then understanding, okay, what could entice them into the category alongside those health claims. It's probably looking at, being a fun challenge brand that is very clearly talking about, being purpose-led or mission-driven. And then, for us, it's very clearly communicating how our pizza is significantly helping lower your carbon footprint of your diet. So it's putting that on pack, but not above taste and quality. And it's an additional perk to purchasing our pizza that taps into one of their growing concerns around sustainability. So there's a lot of things at play, and we're trying to win over new consumers whilst keeping existing vegans, vegetarians, flexitarians happy at the same time, which is the big challenge for us. But I think ultimately, the way the category can reach the mass market is by going now after those open omnivores who represent a significant proportion of the population. And if we can give them, 1 or 2 of these additional benefits alongside taste and price and convenience, then I think it gets really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it really, really does. Linked to that, then, you've obviously got 4 incredible pizzas now. You've got your Hawaiian, your Tex-Mex, margarita, and pepperoni. Why did you choose these particular pizzas? Was it linked to these consumer drivers and the preferences that you mentioned?
Yeah, and it's really a numbers game for us. When we first sat down in Mike's kitchen and came up with the idea of this brand and this company, for us the question was, how can we remove as many animals from the food chain as possible using frozen pizza? And then it became really obvious to us, well, we have to go after the most popular flavors, because that's where the volume's going to come from. It's all great and exciting creating a cheeseburger pizza or a Christmas special, but ultimately, roughly 80% of all frozen pizzas sold in the UK are still pepperoni and margaritas, which is incredible. Yeah, so if you're not offering one of those 2 flavors, you're never going to be, you're never going to be going after the big boys and getting the volume that they're driving through those staple flavors. So the pepperoni always made sense for us as a sort of entry level to get the volumes up, and then we can start introducing more exciting, healthier, more innovative flavors. So yeah, that was why we came up with those 4 initially. And then more recently, the Tex-Mex has been sort of a trending flavor for quite a few years now, and it doesn't seem to be going away. You sort of see Tex-Mex inspired recipes all over the world now, and partly for us that was also an opportunity for a gap in the market. So we didn't see a plant-based Tex-Mex, and it allowed us to also just use veg, some marinated veg and some spices alongside our cheese. Meant that we could avoid this sort of growing concern around ultra processed food and these long ingredient decks that come with a lot of the plant-based meats out there. So that was a conscious decision in the last year or two to offer a very popular trending flavor without relying on those really processed meats and meat alternatives. It's always been about focusing on those core flavors and just trying to win over as many of those regular pizza shoppers who eat meat and dairy as possible.
From your experience with consumers, aside from pizza, what other plant-based products or improved plant-based products do consumers want most?
Yeah, interestingly, I looked at a summary from Veganuary from last January. I looked at their reports, and I think cheese still comes out in the top 3. And I guess it's the different types of cheeses. So someone messaged me this week actually and said, what's happened to all the mozzarellas out there? They can't go into a UK supermarket and find a decent alternative to mozzarella.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah, which I think is crazy because it's such a huge popular cheese, and it's so versatile. If you want to make your own pizzas, you buy some mozzarella. So I think there are some big gaps in dairy alternatives still. I think the cheddars have come a really long way. Cathedral City was one of the best new launches I tried recently. I thought that was incredible, and it's getting so much closer to the original dairy cheeses now. We just need to see extensions of those ranges into other cheeses. I think that's where the big gaps are. And the same probably goes for yogurts, creams and things like that. Obviously milk's been totally saturated, and there's more than enough there, and it's one of the strongest categories within plant-based is the milk alternatives. But I think it's then shown us how far we have to go with the cheeses and the other dairy and one of the other big ones that came up was actually snacks. So I guess this is like party snacks. There's still a big gap there. There's a lot of things that I can't buy as a vegan that I would love to buy for a weekend just to have out for people to nibble on. But it's good to see some of the retailers are hearing this and responding. So just an example, if you go into a Sainsbury's, they've now got their own brand of healthier snacks in the sort of nut and crisp category. I think it's called Flourish, and you can buy 5 or 6 flavors of. You've seen these,
yeah.
And then they're really, they're quite healthy. They're blends of peas and beans and lentils, and they're just dried snacks with different flavors. But they're going after like sour cream and chive and salt and vinegar and cheese, but they're all plant-based. And I think that's really exciting to see, just to start normalizing these alternatives in different parts of the supermarket, just to make sure you can get that whole shop and you can get all of those swaps in without having to go to a specialist shop. I think there's that's where the gaps are for me.
Yeah, it's mainstreaming it, isn't it? A little bit more, making it more accessible to people and just easy. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers to a lot of people, that finding these snacks as a plant-based version, sometimes it's not easy. And so you are just going to go for the traditional version if it's not available or easily accessible. Yeah,
exactly. And I won't go into it too much, but I think down the chilled aisle, for me personally, there's still so much room there for growth, and the products are good enough. We just need to make that space on shelf, and maybe it's down to the right brand with the right proposition. But there's almost nothing in terms of those premium chilled pastas. So, you get your filled pastas and then you buy your sauce alongside it. And you've got chilled garlic dough balls that you'd have with your pizza. Yeah. I think all of these side dishes and the pastas and the sauces are missing a couple of really good plant-based alternatives. So that's something I'm looking at. It's going to be a little way off, but I think there's there's really exciting potential within chilled pasta and sauces, just to have a couple of really good, even cheesy options that look and taste just like those that are already there, but give everyone that choice.
Moving on to developments and technology in the plant-based industry, can you share some recent innovations in food tech that most excite you?
Yeah, so for me, I'm obsessed with anything mushroom-based. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I recently posted about Derek Sarno. He's always up to something exciting that you could never guess. And so he recently helped a local mushroom company to me in Norfolk take over and repurpose an old chicken farm, an old poultry shed that had been just left derelict.
Amazing.
And they took it over and they converted it into an oyster mushroom production site. And then they're now supplying these oyster mushrooms into Tesco across the UK. And what Derek does incredibly well is he educates people on not just the health and sustainability credentials of these mushrooms, but also the versatility of them when you're cooking. So, you only have to go and look at his pages or on the website to see how many different recipes you can make just with these incredible mushrooms. They're so meaty in texture. And the stats around how environmentally friendly they are absolutely mind-blowing. So I think what Derek's doing with exotic mushrooms is one of the most exciting things in the sector. And there are some other brands that seem to be also, making the most of this move towards whole foods alternatives to meat, which I'm really excited about. I think there is a place for this and Meatless Farm and VFC, which are just really tasty, really convenient, affordable alternatives to meat. But I think there is also this sort of growing divide where a lot of people also have an appetite for going back to whole foods, plant-based alternatives. So I think anything in mushroom, I'm keeping a close eye on. There's a couple of American companies. I think one of them's called Meaty with an I, and they've just raised an incredible amount of money recently. And they're doing amazing things with mushrooms, making them into really meaty burgers and sausages and things like that. So I hope to see more mushroom-based products in this sector over the next few years. And I guess probably still the other area of particular interest for us personally is going to always be cheese. It always comes out, in the top three when people are thinking about why they can't stay vegan or why they won't want to take part in Veganuary, is they just miss cheese too much because it's incredibly addictive. And it is very tasty, but it's because it's loaded with salt and fat, and isn't particularly, a lot of it isn't particularly good for us. So I'm seeing really interesting stuff happening across Europe with companies looking at fermentation for cheese. So at the moment we use one that's coming from the Netherlands, and they use about 10 or 15% of white bean to counter the high fat of the coconut.
Interesting.
Which is one of the main ingredients for most plant-based cheeses in the supermarket is coconut oil because of the high fat content. But we're really interested in adding in something, like I said, a bit more sustainable and potentially a bit healthier. So we put in about 10 or 15% white bean. But I'm looking at what's next. Is it a fermented alternative using cashews or almonds, for example? So there's a really exciting company called Mondarella. I don't know if you've ever come across them at events, Gemma.
I have. They're brilliant.
And they have a incredible stuff. And they have a cheese fondue, which comes out of the fountain. I don't know how they clean it, but yeah, that's one of the best cheeses I've ever tried. And the meltability and the stretchability are really important things for people who probably haven't had a plant-based pizza or cheese before. And one of the main challenges is, does it melt? Does it react? And does it act like normal cheese? And I think it's still got, for when you cook it from frozen, I think there's still room for improvement there. So I'm really excited by companies like that who are kind of pushing the boundaries and looking at what's next for plant-based cheese.
So we've talked a little bit about the evolution of the industry, but let's chat about the now and the future. What key factors do you think are going to continue to drive the demand for plant-based foods today?
I think taste has to come first across the board. So we need to all keep, as an industry, we need to keep pushing and improving taste and quality. Whether that's a frozen pizza, whether it's a meat alternative or a plant-based cheese, ultimately, the majority of consumers aren't going to come back more than once or twice if they've had a negative experience. So I think that has to come first. And I think with the recent challenges in the sector and lots of brands sadly going under or facing delistings, and we know in the supermarkets they've started, or they have been, reducing the space for plant-based in chilled and frozen especially. So we need to focus on taste and quality to keep the category alive, but then also help it grow going forwards. And then I think once we've done that, which brands seem to be reacting, I've seen lots of new and improved, for example, on Richmond ham. I've tried that again recently, and it's significantly better taste, and the texture and everything. I can tell they've gone back to basics and come out with a genuinely better product.
Oh, that's
so I think we need to keep doing. Yeah, so I think we need to keep doing that as a whole sector, and then I think it's being very conscious of what are these growing demands for these open omnivores that I mentioned. So people that I think still potentially are on fence, but they're mostly still eating meat and dairy. How can we win them over, even if it's once or twice a week? And I think once you've delivered on taste and quality, and you're happy with that as a brand or supplier, then it's being clear on where the added value is coming from. So why would they swap?
Yeah.
And are you going to be focusing on offering them clear health benefits, which is what we're doing, or is it going after sustainability, which is important to a lot of people? And it's understanding who in that huge portion of people, who you're going after and what do they care about ultimately. And then I think price parity is a huge barrier as well. So this is why a lot of brands have seen a decline over the last few years because of the cost of living crisis. A lot of consumers who are seeing the increasing costs, and they're a lot more conscious about how much they're spending in their shop, are reverting back to meat and dairy because a lot of it's cheaper. But then also some of them are moving over to supermarket own brand, which is one of the rare instances that have seen a real increase in the last year. And this is like, Sainsbury's offer a really affordable Cumberland sausage and a couple of other flavours of sausages and burgers in their own branding, which is almost half the price of some of the plant-based brands. And so a lot of people are moving across to own label to save money, which is great. They're staying in the category, but then it's, okay, what's next? How can brands keep winning other shoppers back over and improve that loyalty? And it does come down to price a lot of the time. So we know that we can't go over £4 because that's a real sweet spot for a frozen pizza. And it's the same in plant-based as it is for meat and dairy. So I guess brands need to be very conscious of how they can offer great products without overpricing them and losing a lot of those price sensitive shoppers at the moment in particular.
We already mentioned a little bit about the challenges that the sector is facing at the moment. What are some of the biggest challenges that One Planet Pizza has faced in developing and scaling your pizzas?
Yeah, so the one I talk about the most, probably the biggest challenge for us, was getting to a certain size, and then having to decide: do we keep producing ourselves in house and build a bigger production unit and hire a bigger team, and get into the whole world of manufacturing, and then having to get BRC accreditation, which is the next step up from Salsa, and that can take years and it can take millions of pounds, and not many brands do it and succeed. It's really high risk, high investment. Or the other option is, and the more common option is, to find a contract manufacturer, a co-man, and outsource your production, and ultimately become the brand vehicle and allow someone else to deal with all of the supply chain and the behind the scenes of running the business. So we made that decision a couple of years ago now, and it was a real turning point for us. It was the hardest thing we've ever had to do. But now we've done it, and we're set up with a manufacturer in the Netherlands, and we're now, most of our time is on brand building and sales and winning those big supermarket listings. We can leave, half of the workload is probably the manufacturing, which we can now offload to a company that have done it for a lot longer and have done it at scale, which is crucial. So I talk a lot about this, and it's different for every brand and for every founder. And some people, it's never the right thing to do. And other companies, it's really common to do that straight away from day one. But for us personally, we were struggling to get in front of the right sized manufacturers. So often they need you to have a certain level of volume, and usually that means you've got a couple of large retailer listings. We only had the one with Asda, and it wasn't quite big enough to get in front of Europe's biggest pizza manufacturers. So we managed to find someone in the middle who was big enough to help us scale and take it to the next level, but also wasn't too big that they just wouldn't see our business as exciting enough an opportunity. So we were lucky that we found the right partner, and now it's been probably the biggest turning point for us, just unlocking that scalability, and ultimately improving the quality of the pizzas, which is the most important thing.
For businesses looking to enter the plant-based market, what 2 tips would you offer based on your experience? So not on scaling up this time, but on entering the plant-based market.
I would say, and I wish me and Mike had done it, is ask those questions, ask yourself those questions as soon as you can. And that can be anything from, who are our customers now, and who do we think they'll be in 5 years' time? Where is the biggest demands? Where is the volume at the moment? And how are the trends changing the category? What are the biggest purchasing factors for the consumers we're going after, and how can we tap into those? What's the competition? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? All of these very simple questions we probably didn't take enough time to look at. We just went out there and did it, and then learnt the hard way once we'd launched. So if I could go back, I would probably spend a lot more time thinking about how the sector is potentially going to change year to year, and how quickly we can react to that and keep up with those shifting sort of consumer demands within plant-based. And I guess on top of that, the second point would be, almost to counter that, is don't wait too long, because the sector is changing very quickly. And we were very quick to react. And I think within a couple of months, we were producing our first batch, and we had an early concept of our brand and proposition ready to go to shops. And a lot of early stage founders, or people with just a concept or an idea, can spend too long coming up with ultimately a business model or proposal. I've seen, huge, impressive documents with a fantastic idea, but if they wait 6-12 months to make a single product and get it out there in front of one customer, or the whole sector has moved a little bit, and actually you need to go back and some of this stuff isn't relevant anymore.
Yeah.
Or someone's come out and done it. Someone's come in and done something similar much quicker. Within 2 months, we got a pizza in a very early stage of our packaging and branding into shops, but sold them directly ourselves with a secondhand freezer van, dropped them off. And we were having those really vital conversations with the shop owners and customers who were coming in and taking a look at them and hopefully buying them, and just starting to find out, what they thought of the price, of the branding, of the messaging, of the flavors, asking all of those really important questions early on, and then going back to the kitchen table and tweaking and improving things. And that never really stops. I think even up until now, eight years later, we're still listening closely to what those customers on the ground are saying and what they're looking for next. And, always looking at what's the next best plant-based cheese, or how can we improve the base, or are those key call-outs on pack about health and sustainability, are they still resonating the same way with the same consumers? And are they also going to excite and entice those new open omnivores who are still eating meat? And can we, there's a balance there somewhere, but you need to constantly go back and review that.
So it's all about listening to consumers continuously and just constant reformulation as those preferences change.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of brands come and go over the years. And I think one of the biggest reasons why they don't succeed is that they almost, create something that's great at the time and works really well. But then the sector has overtaken them and changed a huge amount. The consumers expect a lot more. Their demands are different. They're more concerned about health than they are animal welfare 5 years ago, for example. And they're not buying those products anymore for those reasons. They've found something else, or they've gone back to meat and dairy, which is worst case scenario. So we're never resting, and we're always looking at how we can improve taste quality whilst offering a great price and a strong brand with clear benefits to those shoppers. But I would say it's never a finished product. It's always in some stage of development.
Spinning this question a little bit now then, what advice would you give to retailers and food service providers looking to leverage the plant-based trend to meet consumer demand effectively?
Yeah, I think retailers, it's got a little bit better over the last 6 months from our conversations with them, but they have been very reluctant to take on new emerging challenger brands within plant-based, which I think is a real shame and a big missed opportunity. And it's also really frustrating for the industry because the retailers need to take some level of risk to ultimately improve things and drive the category forward. So an example is we were talking to a major retailer towards the end of last year, and we almost won a listing with our Tex-Mex pizza, which is still an industry first, really innovative sourdough base. The sector's never had that flavor within frozen before, so it gives their customers something totally new. It's fully HFS compliant, so it's healthier, it's better for you. It ticks a lot of boxes, but because for various reasons, because we were a new brand and a new supplier, it just never quite landed, and we're still working on that now. But it's really frustrating because we have won 2 other listings, one coming up next month and another in January in major supermarkets for that very flavour for the same reasons. And those 2 retailers are, luckily for us, they're much more open to taking a few risks with small emerging brands because they've really properly listened to us But if the supermarket isn't willing to sit down and listen to you and to hear your story and to look at ultimately the evidence, then they're not going to give you that opportunity, which is a real shame. So we've struggled to even sit down in front of them and say to the buyer, it's worked for another retailer. This is why it's worked, because we understand who these consumers are and we can bring in these new consumers. That's what these current brands aren't doing. And I guess their problem is they're just thinking about how the category isn't growing and they don't think it can. So really, that's what that's the main barrier we're up against. And from retailers, we really want them to be more patient, to give us an opportunity in one shot to sit down and to, really get them excited and show them how we can improve the category.
So we've talked about the rise of plant-based. What are your predictions then for the future of plant-based for the next 5 years and also for One Planet Pizza?
Oh, okay. So future of plant-based, I think this conversation around ultra processed food isn't going away. And post-COVID, post cost of living crisis, people are still very concerned about their health, which is great. And I think although the ultra processed conversation has got a little bit carried away, and the terminology is very confusing, and no one really has a full understanding of what's happening here. And we need to improve education around all of the food we eat. I think for the plant-based sector, the future really is going to see a growing divide between healthier whole foods plant-based alternatives, and still I think there is an appetite for, like I said before, convenience, taste, and just your classic alternatives to sausages, burgers, chicken, cheese. These aren't particularly healthy. That people still eat that. I still eat them every week, and I still enjoy them. But I think there is now this growing divide, and I think whilst I love the classic alternatives, I am probably more excited about the future of healthier whole foods alternatives. I think one brand that's doing really well is Ramona's. So she does an amazing frozen falafel, a big bag of falafel, which I think is probably the best on the market. And she's probably more famous for her hummuses.
I love the hummus.
So good. And I'm seeing a lot of healthier plant-based snack brands like Boundless, who do sort of gut-friendly snacks. Superfoodio, who do peanut butter buttons, which have just launched in Tesco. And then who was the other chap I was going to do a shout out for? Soaked oat bars. So these are plant-based, healthier bars, which are also gut-friendly. So I think I'm very excited, and I think most of the innovation and most of the appetite now is going to come from the healthier half of plant-based, going back to its roots, looking at those whole foods ingredients with smaller ingredient decks as well. And like I said, I think mushrooms, I think there's still a huge opportunity for growth that comes from one of the most sustainable foods on the planet. That's just one ingredient. Lots of different options there. Oysters are incredibly versatile. I think we're going to see a lot more from the world of mushrooms going forwards. And then just more healthier, accessible snacks. I think the demand is increasing. It's not going away. And I think the gut-friendly trend at the moment seems to be one of the biggest ones. So just an example, Bold Bean Co. are one of the real success stories of the last couple of years. They do an amazing range of premium beans and peas, and they've just launched, I think, 3 flavors of baked beans, which sounds bizarre. Innovation within baked beans. You never would have thought that a few years ago. But they're in most of the major retailers here in the UK. Incredible growth story, and it's kind of reflected this huge growing demand for ultimately for better versions of these basic ingredients. So better quality, better tasting, almost premiumizing what was always seen as very bland and boring tinned food. But I think now is the year of the bean, or the decade of the bean, which I'm really excited about because of all of those health benefits and the fact it's accidentally plant-based, which is great for the sector, whether people actively are buying these products because they're plant-based or not. Ultimately, for the sector, it's helping it grow and move forwards, which for me is a big win.
And how about One Planet Pizza? What's next for you guys?
And for One Planet Pizza, well, we've got 2 big listings coming up, which I'm going to be talking about a lot over the next few months. And it's been a long time coming for us. So we've been working really hard behind the scenes and can't wait to get our Tex-Mex into a major retailer, launching into about 315 stores. So you'll be able to find our Tex-Mex in almost every corner of the country very soon, and then landing in another retailer in January in time for Veganuary 2025. So for us, it's going to be, getting our spicy, healthier, veg-forward pizza into as many hands and mouths as possible over the next 6-12 months. That's our main goal. And then I'm looking at what's next once we take over the world with our Tex-Mex, I think, or at least the UK. I think there's still a big amount of space within pasta and those side dishes that would go alongside a pizza, like dough balls, garlic breads. But trying to incorporate a decent plant-based cheese, I think, would make it really exciting, and hopefully bring in those consumers who are on the fence. And potentially there's a high-protein pizza there as well, which I'm looking at the moment.
Wow, sounds like very exciting times ahead for you at One Planet Pizza. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, Joe. For those of you watching and listening, you can follow One Planet Pizza's journey on their website, and you can catch their very vibrant LinkedIn stories as well. They're always great fun to have a little read of. For more insights, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and catch next month's episode, which will discuss how to get meat eaters on board with plant-based. And you can also head to the New Food Hub for more content.